You're listening to Aviation Marketing Hangar Flying, the community for the best sales and marketing professionals in the aviation industry. You can't learn to fly just from a book. You learn from other pilots who know the tools, the skills, and the territory. Your hosts, John and Paula Williams, are your sales and marketing test pilots. They take the risks for you and share strategies, relevant examples, hacks, and how-tos. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes so you won't miss a thing.
Welcome to our book club discussion. This month we read UnMarketing. As you know, every month we read something about aviation, sales, or marketing. And this month, UnMarketing was actually suggested to us by one of our members. And I read it first probably in 2010. It was a bunch of years ago. And I have to say it's gotten better.
Better than worse.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple of first impressions about the book. One of them is that it's by a couple that work together, which is kind of fun. Of course, John and I love that and they're funny too. What did you think?
Well, yeah, it was okay all the way until page 159. We'll talk about that later.
Fine. But first impressions is what we're talking about now. So you didn't get to 159 before you had a first impression, right?
True. However.
Okay. Well, let me tell you my favorite part of the introduction. This is what, made me think, these are people that have some philosophical commonality with us. Anyway, this is Scott Stratton and Alison Kramer, the co-authors of the book. But in the introduction, they say, marketing is not a task. Marketing is not a department. Marketing is not a job. Marketing happens every time you engage or not with your past, present, and potential customers. UnMarketing takes it a step further and talks about any time anyone else talks about your company. All of that is marketing, or unmarketing as they call it.
Yeah, but that's just talking about corporate stuff. But you market every time you talk to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime anybody's talking about your product or service, whether it's corporate or an entrepreneur or anything else.
Not even that. Just in normal person-to-person discussions, you're trying to convince somebody of your position, your thought process, or something.
That is absolutely true. So yeah, we're always trying to convey our point of view, just as you did right there. Good job. All right, cool. So the first thing that I bookmarked, and, of course, we could go on for hours about this book because I think there's a lot of really good stuff in there and some not so great stuff. But one of the points that they make is about how everything has changed and nothing is different. And I think that's a really good point to make because a lot of people are saying, I don't understand marketing these days. It's gotten so weird, right?
Actually, they may say that, but compared to what I was supposed to have learned in marketing and business school, it's a lot easier now to understand than it used to be.
You think?
Yeah, you can spend a whole lot less money now because you know what you're doing and how to measure.
That's true. Exactly. So, some of the things that are different about marketing, of course, there's different tools. There's social media now that there didn't used to be. The internet has changed the way we do things. There's a lot more data available and a lot more ways to get and measure and collate and graph and chart all that data, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can do something and you can track it all the way down to the last click.
Exactly. I mean, when I used to work at Wells Fargo, we used to spend a ton of money on Harvard Business Review, Gartner Group, all kinds of statistical research that now you can get for free from the social media, right?
Well, not only that, but back in the day, you had to have millions to spend to even approach a marketing company because they didn't really know what they were doing. They were just blasting pictures out there all over billboards and in papers and stuff, and they couldn't track where it came from.
Right, exactly. So there are new methods of targeting. There's also new expectations that ads will be targeted. I mean, the average person who gets a irrelevant ad or anything else, I mean, it's not like we're watching the same 3 channels on network TV and watching soap ads. Everybody uses soap. We're getting super targeted We know you're in this job and we know you have this hobby and we know all of these things about you. So the ads that are going to show up in your life are a lot more targeted. And I think we have that expectation too.
And if you keep your Wi-Fi turned on walking down the street, you get zapped as you walk by a new Wi-Fi.
Exactly. You get zapped by a bookstore saying, we have a special that you might like.
Mm-hmm.
Come on in. Some of that is intrusive. Some of that is actually really cool, depending on which side of the desk you're sitting on as a marketing professional, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We also have some different means of connecting with people, as John mentioned, the push notifications on some of the messenger services. There's Snapchat. There's Periscope. There's all this crazy stuff. And another point that they make in the book, and I totally agree with it, is just because it's cool doesn't mean you should be doing it. A lot of the social media that the kids are using, most of our demographics in the aviation industry are more traditional, but they're using tools that their grandkids and kids introduce them to, and I'm talking like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, which have now become the old standbys, right?
Everything else is that new cool stuff.
Everything else is that new cool stuff that the cool kids are using. And just because the cool kids are using it doesn't mean you should jump in and start doing it, because, your target audience is unlikely to be there. They're likely to be the kids. Okay. So things that are the same. Principles. If you are a slime ball spammy moron, and were in the 1950s, you're going to be a spammy slime ball moron today, right?
That's actually not going to change.
Nope.
I mean, the old used car sales guy is still the new used car sales guy.
Exactly. So, good people are good people, bad people are bad people. They just have different ways of showing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We need the same discipline to measure things as we always have. It's just a question of whether we're using Gartner Group or whether we're using Facebook data. Right?
Well, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. And you can get a lot more granularity.
Right. Absolutely. And cheaper too. We have the same need to spend money wisely. So, if you have a marketing budget, you need to still have a marketing budget. The people that tell you, this is outside of a marketing budget, that's crap. Everything needs to be counted and everything needs to be accounted for. So, we still have that same discipline of spending money wisely and managing the budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing, and the thing that I think it all comes down to, is that we have the same relationships with our customers and our prospects and our future customers and things like that. It's just a question of how do we communicate with them? Is it always on the phone? Is it always in person? Or do we sometimes use new tools to continue those same relationships with the same folks,
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So good stuff, bad stuff. This should be really reassuring, I think, to folks who may be a little uneasy about, how crazy marketing's gone in the last few years, right?
Yeah, really.
Okay. All right. So this is a story that I really loved, Pull and Stay. This was the story about Scott actually went to an art show, Art by the Lake. And he said, you had a very high intensity of buyers and sellers, all of them motivated. The art buyers, these were art lovers who had paid to get in, and they're wandering around admiring paintings. And, a lot of these people were driving nice cars. You assume they had the resources and everything else. That you've got all three qualifying factors. You got money, authority, and need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're wandering around looking at people's paintings. And the painters were sitting around in a lot of cases, and sometimes the extent of the conversation would be, oh, this is really nice work, and the painter would say, thank you. And the buyer would wander off to the next tent,
Rather than engaging and saying, well, if you notice how the brush strokes here and this color fades into it, and they said nothing.
Right. Or they could have said something like, I'm coming out with some new landscapes next year. If you'd like to be the first to see them, I'd be happy to send you some shots,
Mm-hmm.
Or I have other work that isn't in the booth if you'd like to see
No,
more
but
than happy to send that
they're
to you.
the art equivalent of a technical person.
Yeah.
They're not into this engaging sales kind of stuff.
Well, this is exactly what happens at trade shows, right?
Exactly.
You know, you have a technical trade show or technical people in the booth at a trade show. People walk by and they see something cool and they go, wow, this is really neat stuff. And the guy says,
Thank you.
thank you. And the potential buyer wanders off to the next booth. So, you know, this story, I think, in the book talks about the different ways to prevent this sort of thing and the different things that you can do, you know, to really engage and to make sure that, you know, some of these people are going to be ready to buy right now. Some of these people are going to be 6 months before they have a space over their sofa that they need a painting for. You know, whatever the situation is, you can accommodate it, right?
It's the same thing that Sandler sales teach. 20% of the people you don't need to sell to, they're going to buy.
Right.
20% of the people will never buy no matter what you do.
Right.
So your job is to make the rest of the 60% of the people you can sell to.
Right, exactly. So there are lots of ways that you can do this without being pushy or slimy, but just ways to serve potential customers better. Because otherwise they're going to go home, they're going to look at their house and they're going to say, you know, there was something that I saw at that art show. I don't remember the name of the artist, but that would look so good right here. And they're never going to make the connection. They're never going to make the purchase. So you haven't served them well and they haven't, you know, the resources to reach back out to you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right, next point. Your website. Old school versus new school. And I love what I think it's probably Alison that says at the beginning of this chapter. I wish we didn't have to keep writing this. You know, I wish we could have dropped this out of this version because this should be over by now. It is 2017. People should know how to build a website, right? That is not just a Yellow Pages ad.
Or hire somebody to do it. Realize the need to hire somebody to do it.
Exactly. And realizing that, you know, more people are likely to go to your website than they are to walk in your front door, depending on the type of business you have, right?
Mm-hmm. And even if they do walk in the front door, they're going to go back and look at your website just to validate you.
Yeah, or to buy in the future and things like that. So, you know, there are really two kinds of websites. The old kind is what she's calling a brochure. You know, things that are static and outdated. It's amazing how many websites you go to and you look at the footer and it says copyright 2010, right?
Yeah.
Or 2014 or something like that. It's an instant, we really don't care. I was going to say something else.
That's right. That works too.
We really don't, you know, have an interest in investing in our website because we really don't care enough about our website visitors to give them anything new.
And that's just because they don't understand how it works these days.
Exactly. So things get static and outdated, and that instantly impacts your credibility.
And there are those people who will say, well, that doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would beg to differ. I would say that if you are saying it doesn't work for you, there's a high probability, probably 0.9 or better, that you don't realize it's working on you.
Mm-hmm. You are one of those people that says, that stuff doesn't work on me.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And in one case, I would have to say, even though I wanted to buy, life kept getting in the way. And if these folks hadn't sent me a postcard every month for 5 months, I would probably still not have purchased an airplane. Mm-hmm. Even though I wanted to, it was just a matter of, damn it, I'm going to do something.
Yeah, the priorities of that day, week, month, year get influenced by what you see on a daily basis. And
yeah, I mean, you know, there was always a reason. I wasn't trying to not buy it because I really wanted to buy the dang thing. Mm-hmm. And then finally I said, you know what, heck with it. And I called them up and said, will you take American Express for a down payment?
Right.
And they did, and we went on.
Right, exactly. So another thing that's a dead giveaway to, you know, the old style websites is that it is full of sales pitches and that it is company centered. It's all about the company, as opposed to the new style, which are all about the customer, right? You know,
features versus benefits.
Yep, we understand that you are like this and you have these problems and these are situations that you run into and we can help. You know?
This is how we could solve your problem.
Exactly. Right. And another way that they do that is they have continually updated content and news that's of interest to that particular audience. So they have a reason to come to the website and a reason to find out a little bit more about the company, even if they're not interested in buying right this second. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. Another thing they touched on was comments on your website. And this is something they kind of went back and forth on. I think they may disagree between the two of them. It happens.
Far be it.
Exactly. Comments on a website really kind of give the indication, especially comments on articles and blog posts and things like that, give the impression that, we care about what you think about what we just said, and we will respond to you if you, have a different experience or whatever. But if you're not going to keep up on that and a comment is going to sit there for 6 months without anybody ever responding to it, then that does more harm than good.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So I'm all in favor of comments. I think they really provide just another way of making it easy for your customers or potential customers to interact with you. And it also gives you a way of showing your work, Well,
it's interesting because that works particularly well the more technical a product or service is.
Yeah. You look at like Elon Musk's blog, he writes some pretty specific stuff that I don't understand, but there's a lot of people that do, and their questions are very enlightening, and his responses to those questions are even more enlightening.
Well, and then you end up with an issue with a product you purchased a while back, and you go to the company's blog and you get into it, and it's nice to see that it's current and that people got similar problems, and you got somebody that knows, says, I tried this and I tried that, and this is what worked, this didn't.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's an interesting point. And I know we passed a section that you wanted to talk about, and I don't have a slide for it. But...
Oh, no. It's... Or
we can come back to it at the end, your choice.
Oh, let me see here. See, and they addressed this in one place and didn't come back and say how they're different. And to me, that's a no-go.
Okay.
Because what they said was, why you can't learn from millionaires, page 159. Right?
Okay.
And let's see if I can find the salient point here. And they go through and they tell you all these things. The problem with trying to emulate a millionaire is that it isn't a business. Making money isn't a career. It's the result of good business. And they go down through this and they say, you fall into a trap of simply wanting to be rich. And the next thing you know, you're sitting in a hotel conference room at a free, in quotes, seminar being told that the only way to get rich is to pay someone money to show you how to get rich. The smart cookies reading this will realize that the way the seminar leaders make money is by selling a program on how to make money. Send me $5 in the mail right now, send you step-by-step instruction on how to make $1 million, $5 at a time. And what they're saying here is exactly what they're doing.
They produced a book.
They produced a book on how to make money.
Well, no, they produced a book on how to serve your customers better, and they say that in the introduction.
Yeah.
If you are just trying to make money, then find the easy button. Good luck to you. But if you want to do it by if you want to do it by building relationships with people, this will help. And there are a lot of companies that have done that. So you don't emulate millionaires, you emulate successful companies.
But I read that after going through that thing and said, you know what?
There's a little bit of a...
What is the difference between what they're doing and what that's doing? The only difference is it's in a little more detail.
That's true. Good point. All right. So call them out on it, John. All right. Authenticity and transparency, speaking of such things.
Too bad they're not here to argue with.
Well, and the interesting thing is, I bet you anything, Scott Stratton's going to argue with this because he does. If you watch his Twitter account, he loves it when people disagree with him, and he responds too. So
well, we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So authenticity and transparency, speaking of such things. Authenticity and transparency.
Not going to talk about it.
There you go. Errors. We all make them. How do you prevent and fix them? And also, do you admit to them? So yes, I admit. I have a typo on one of my slides.
Oh, for heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid. All right. So authenticity and transparency. Let's talk about how much do you disclose? And everybody has a different comfort level with this. And, my best advice is to stay well within your own comfort level. Never, never, never go out on a limb in public or in social media or at a trade show or at a speaking engagement or anything else, because everything is being recorded nowadays and it's going to show up somewhere you don't expect it.
And what's interesting is there's an old cartoon about going out on a limb.
Yeah.
And you're standing on the edge of the limb with a saw and you're sawing off on the wrong side of the limb.
Right.
Because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're Chick-fil-A and part of your branding is, that you're affiliated with a particular religious or political standpoint, more power to you. That's great, but for a lot of the rest of us, that is not part of what we're here for. Our principles and, John and my guiding principle really is to help people sell more products and services and to avoid waste, a lot of the waste that goes on in the aviation industry and marketing. We're not going to go out on a limb on politics or religion or anything else any more than we have to as part of that mission, right?
No, we'll touch tangentially on stuff and just laugh at it or us or somebody.
Exactly. And because that's not really part of what we want discussed in the public sphere. And, we talk about other things, like I hate it when people hand out pens at trade shows, and we have opinions about stuff, and we have opinions about stuff that's completely irrelevant to marketing that we don't mind you knowing.
Or what is even worse than pens is the fishbowl. You drop your business card in and take a chance on winning an iPad.
Or something generic, but we'll talk about that when we get to the trade shows. But yeah, I mean, it's fine to be opinionated, and it's fine to be opinionated about controversial things, but you want to think that through before you go off on something in a way that you're not comfortable with, or that you find out later was disclosed in an arena that you weren't expecting it to. You just have to assume that anything you say in public will be sent to your grandmother and your first grade teacher and everybody else. Everything is public nowadays, especially
with nauseating video and audio detail.
Exactly. And that, that can happen in a restaurant. I mean, that's not just exclusive to social media.
Exactly.
So, we just want to make sure that, nobody gets in an uncomfortable situation. And especially is because we're all, what is the word? Complicated. And have many sides to our personalities and things like that. And we don't necessarily want all of those sides on public display all of the time, right?
Or some of them even part of the time.
Right. Okay. Another thing is ethics. There have been some really public examples of people plagiarizing things, websites, speeches, other kinds of things. Everybody has Google these days.
Oh, you think?
Yeah. Believe it or not, if you steal something from someone else, chances are people will know within 45 seconds that you did. And, is that what you want to be known for?
And particularly because you can actually set software to look for stuff. Mm-hmm. And 45 seconds is about right. Once it's out there, it's about all it takes for you. You get a ping.
Right. We use some software. I know there are several programs, Copyscape and others, that you can use on your website, so that if anybody copies statistically unlikely strings of characters from your website to somewhere else, you'll be notified. And usually a cease and desist is all you need to do for that, and people are usually really embarrassed, but they're really surprised that they get caught. Mm-hmm. That's the weird thing. We live in the age of instant searches and, not just text, but also images, video, and other kinds of things. There are ways to search for that and to...
No, you don't have to search for it. You can set software to do it for you.
Exactly. So you want to be authentic. You want to make sure that everything that you put out there is original, and that anybody that you are working with is producing original material. So that's
Yep.
a thing. And then errors we already talked about, right? Okay, cool. So let's talk about video. I really like Scott's sizzle reels. And those are, and, actually, this is where they're talking about, every public speaker has a thing called a sizzle reel that they use to promote their public speaking. And it's usually, testimonials and clips of them speaking and people talking about them and so on. What these guys did instead was some short videos that get right to the point of some of the topics that he talks about. And some of the ones that he uses are like QR codes kill kittens. Obviously, he has a very strong opinion about QR codes and how they are awful. Millennials rant and the wake up call lady, and all of these. We'll put the links to these in the show notes so you can see them. But the point is, they are very, very short, and they are not the traditional demo reel, right? The only thing that they do is they serve the same purpose in terms of advertising Scott's availability to speak on particular topics, and they do a really good job of doing that. But they do it by getting right to the point and telling a great story, right? So instead of rambling about a lot, and we do that in our book club.
Oh, ramble?
Ramble, yeah, exactly. But this is for people who know, like, and trust us already and who want to hear what we have to say about a particular book and would rather spend half an hour listening to the highlights of a book than actually reading the book itself. This is a different format than a promotional video where you have to get to the point within 45 seconds or 15 seconds in order to keep people's interest. And the other thing they mention about videos, to get professional help when needed, they spend $1,000 on every episode of their podcast because they do video and audio.
So do we.
Yeah. They do live video. And
this is live video.
They do it in a professional studio and things like that. So they have a different degree of need for professional help, but
so you're telling me this is not a professional studio?
we certainly do when we need to. And at some point in the future, we'll probably be spending $1,000 per episode on our videos, which is fine.
I probably should figure out how much we do spend, but it's more than you think.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So trade shows. Do you want to tell the story?
Yep.
Or do you want me to?
You
okay.
can.
Great. Okay.
They want to listen to you, not me.
I'm sure they like us both. But anyway, Scott was at a trade show, and I think everyone can relate to this. He was wearing a badge that had the little red ribbon that said student on it because of the situation he was in at the time. And he was walking around at this trade show, and he was actually looking for a particular kind of software for a company that he was working with. And everybody kind of dismissed him because they saw student on his badge, and they thought, okay, well, he's not a qualified buyer. And he had people actually kind of physically almost block his path so that he wouldn't be clogging up their booth, so that they could be talking to the more qualified customers. And, that was in one case. In another case, they didn't even look up from their iPads or cell phones or whatever. In another case, they were talking to each other and they acted like he was interrupting them with his questions. And, we're just kind of rude to him. And of course, this is like the second or third day of a trade show. And of course, by the second or third day of a trade show, everybody's grouchy and tired and wanting to go home and so on. But anyway, he ended up making a purchase, as a result of a contact that he made at that trade show. And it was basically the only person that was not dissing him because of his qualifications or apparent qualifications. Nowadays, you cannot tell from the way someone is dressed or, from what's on their badge. People jump companies all the time, or they may be using a badge from a different company than they actually work for. They may be a student now, but, students often get jobs, get real jobs, that kind of thing. So, you never want to discount somebody's credentials and things like that. And I know we're just going into NBAA next week. And there's a lot of things that we've talked about in different podcasts and other things about how to get people to your trade show booth, how to interact with them, and make it more likely that you'll make more sales from that. I thought that story was interesting because you can do all of that stuff right and still screw it up just by being dismissive, or not even rude, just dismissive,
Yep.
All right. And then the other thing that they talked about was ways to use social media at trade shows. And that's a great chapter to review just before NBAA. The hashtag for NBAA, of course, is pound NBAA 17. And using those trade show hashtags has done us a whole lot of good. The first time we went to an aviation trade show, we didn't know anybody, right? At least not beforehand. But we spent some time on social media looking at the kind of folks that were going to be there. We made a lot of friends, including Bené Wilson and Brad McAllister and a few other people that we did not know prior to that show. Ended up going to a tweet up and knowing somebody from prior, and then you get to meet them in person and everything else. They're talking about how you can often coordinate different activities at your booth with people who are going to be at booths near you. You can do a lot of things getting in touch with people prior to the trade show and during the trade show when you say, the next person that shows up at our booth wearing a red shirt, that said they found us on Instagram, wins a prize, So that's a very cool thing. And of course they say, the next person that shows up at our booth wearing a red shirt that says they found us on Instagram wins an iPad, which drives me absolutely crazy, right? We think your prizes should be a lot more geared toward your ideal customer than being generic, right? Mm-hmm. I also really like it when people send things after the trade show instead of giving things away at the trade show, like giving away pens and stuff. You get a lot of freebie seekers and people like that. So people give a lot of stuff away that ends up not being helpful. So better use of your trade show budget to send information packages afterwards to people that you actually had a conversation with and that you were able to make a connection with. All right. So next month is Brain Surfing, the Top Strategy Minds in Marketing by Heather Lefevre. I was a little skeptical of this one because of the title. I was thinking, oh, great, this is like neuropsychology or some weird thing like that. But she means brain surfing in the sense of couch surfing. She spent weeks or months basically living with 9 different entrepreneurs and business leaders and learning everything that they do. So, it's basically like the NPR concept of embedded. I don't know if you've heard of that podcast where they go live with a particular situation for a while before they start reporting on it. And, so the intention, and this is one that I haven't read, this is unusual. Usually the books that are in our book club are ones that I have read, but this one was suggested to us and we will see. The jury's still out, right?
Of course.
Okay. All right. So go sell more stuff.
America needs the business, so says Zig Ziglar.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.
And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for Aviation Marketing Hangar Flying, the best place to learn what really works in sales and marketing in the aviation industry. Remember to subscribe on iTunes and leave a rating.
You could.